Thank you. Hi everyone, I'm Adam Mark. I'm a developer for Brightcove in Boston, Massachusetts. Brightcove is best known for its video publishing platform. We just got into the mobile app development space, and tonight I'm going to show you how you can make native apps for iOS and Android using web technologies, HTML5, CSS3, JavaScript, just to name a few. How many of you are web developers? Designers? How many of you have ever made native apps with Objective-C or Java? How many of you think Objective-C is a vitamin? You actually don't need to know anything about Objective-C or Java or Xcode or Android developer tools. You don't need to know any of that. If you're a web developer, you're going to find AppCloud to be very easy to use. I've been doing web development for a long time. I never built a native app in my life until I started working for Brightcove and using AppCloud. So tonight I'm going to show you an app that I whipped up in just a few days, and then I'm going to show you how I built it. And then I'm going to show you how you can do the same thing. Cool? Okay. And let me say, first of all, thank you to Wesley and to the HTML5 group and to Genius Score for hosting us. So I want to show you an app that I built for my phone. Let me see if I can get it up here. If at any time you can't see what's going on, just raise your hand and I'll make the text larger, or I will zoom in. Okay? Can everyone see this?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to show you an app I built called Apps on Tap. This is a simple app that has a beer theme. Did everyone get beer, by the way? This presentation is this presentation is better if you're drinking. We expected a few more people to come, so there's tons of beer. I can't take it home with me.
But I can.
Wesley. Share. You're making out then.
Yes, okay.
So this app was built with AppCloud. I designed and developed it myself, and it took, I don't know, it took me a few days to do it. It has 4 sections. The first section is a photo gallery of beers with really nerdy names like HTML, Facebook, navigation bar. This is good stuff. It doesn't write itself. Actually, it took me a week or two to write all of this. It only took me a few days to build the app. API, IPA.
That's pretty good.
That's pretty good.
And from here, I can filter by type of beer. Right. This section here is pulling data from our Twitter feed, DC AppCloud. If you're not following me, you should. This section here is showing me bars in the area. I think the last time I opened this I was in Boston. So it's showing me bars within, I think, a 3-mile radius of where I currently am. And this is using the Google Places API and the Google Static Maps API. And this section here is pulling data from the meetup.com API. Now, most of what you're looking at here was built with web tech, HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. but some of it is actually native. So if you look, see this navigation bar? That's a native component. Okay? So we call this model of development a hybrid development model, because we have some web and some native. Each of these sections or views is backed by an HTML page with associated JavaScript and CSS and other assets. It's almost as if I'm switching between 4 tabs in a web browser. Now, I can do things inside of this AppCloud app that I couldn't do in a web app that was running in a web browser like mobile Safari. Okay? For example, I can take a picture. See that? Let's turn it on me. I'll take a picture of myself, drinking a beer, and then drop that into the page. Okay? This is not something you can do in a web app running in a web browser because you don't have access to the camera. Okay? I'm going to show you one more example of something you can do natively that you can't do in a web browser, just to drive this point home. So I'm going to go to AppCloud Studio. This is the kind of the administrative phase of AppCloud. This is where you come after you build your app to manage your app once it's in production. And I'm going to go to the notifications section here. And I'm going to create a new push notification. Do we all know what push notifications are? Yeah, okay. So let's write a new push message for our beer app. Say, today is Thirsty Thursday. Now brewing HTML5. Okay. Now I can also, can everyone see this by the way? I'm going to zoom in. With this message I can pass key value pairs along this notification so that the app can respond to it intelligently. The user won't see those key value pairs, but if I wanted to, for example, pair some piece of content with the message itself, so that when the user opens the message, it goes into a particular news article or other piece of content, I can do that right here. I'm going to select the apps that I want to target and the platforms. I can send this message right away, or I can schedule it to go on a certain date at a certain time. I'm going to send it right away. I can filter it by a particular city, so I can say, I only want to send this to people within 50 miles of Atlanta. Okay. I'm not going to do that here. I'm going to send it to everyone. I could even narrow it down to people who haven't done anything in the app in, say, 2 or 3 weeks. Okay. You can get fairly specific here for this targeting. And then here it's going to tell me how many users this message can reach. Now this is a little demo app that I made. Some of my friends installed it. So this is going to hit 6 users. In your case, it could be 60 or 600 or 60,000 users across both iOS and Android. Okay. So I'm going to send this. Wait for it to show up. I got it on one phone. Let me show you one more thing too. We just released a push notification API. So I can do this from an application of my choosing here. This is a payload I'm going to send. This is a little JSON object. So if I wanted to, for example, hook this into my content management system, I could do it. So let's change the message here. And I'm going to send this message out. Let's see what we get here, right? Can everyone see this? Let me zoom in a little bit. So this was the first message I sent, and this is the one I just sent. This is one I sent a little while ago when I was testing. That's cool, right? You can't do that with a web app running a web browser. And you don't need to do any coding whatsoever to get push notifications to work in an AppCloud app, unless you want to handle the message in a specific way. Otherwise, that works out of the box. I'm going to show you later how to download the SDK and get up and running. We have a free version. Unfortunately, push notifications is not included in the free version, but if you do want to use push notifications, it's very, very cheap. Okay? So you might want to come into AppCloud or similar product, start building an app, and then over time, layer in services as your app gains popularity. Okay? I want to show you two more apps quickly that were built with AppCloud. I'll show you over here on the tablet. Okay. Good. This is a demo that I made. It's a sales tool. It's a sales enablement app. We have a lot of customers who ask us to help them build sales enablement apps that would allow, say, a salesperson to go into a facility without internet connectivity and show videos or show documents. What you can do in AppCloud is actually save files to the file system. Again, this is something you can't do in a web app running in a web browser. So in this demo here, I have some documents. I'm going to add this to my briefcase, go into my briefcase, and I can see that I have these documents that are living on the device, downloaded to the device's file system, so that when I'm offline, I can access these anytime I want. I can even do it with a video file. So I've got, let's try this one. So here's a video, I can play it. Cool, okay. Awesome, I'm going to save it, add it to my briefcase. And then I go into my briefcase, and here's my video. These are some of the AppCloud developers. These are people I work with. Don't. Maybe I shouldn't have shown this. So are you seeing the benefits of this hybrid native app development model? Oh yeah, it's very quick. So what I want to do now is, and before I show you how I built this, I want to emphasize, it's not abundantly clear, that these will work on Android as well. Okay? So I'm showing these to you on iPhone and iPad because those are devices that I own. But I have the apps on Tap app here running on the Android phone as well. And it's all from the same code base. Right? I developed once and I deployed both to Android and iOS at the same time. It's killing two birds with one stone. Okay? Very few companies can afford to develop native apps for iOS and Android at the same time. It's simply too expensive, it's too complicated. But with AppCloud, if you have web developers on your staff, or if you are a web developer, you can now build these native apps and you can do it for iOS and Android at the same time.
Did you have to do any special working around in order for the videos to work off of an Apple product versus an Android product?
The question is, did I have to do any special work to get the video to work on iOS? That video file is an MP4, so that'll play on iOS or on Android. If you're talking about streaming, that's kind of another story. I mean, video can get very complicated. Brightcove is in the video business. That's why I have a job.
So are you using
This
HTML5
stuff's pretty
video
hard.
tag?
What's that?
Are you using the video tag in HTML5 as your
Yeah,
player?
absolutely.
Well, it supports a lot of formats.
Yeah.
So will these in theory work with, I guess, Windows 8 once it comes out?
AppCloud support Windows 8. Right now, we're just focused on iOS and Android, which covers 90-some% of the market, almost the entire market. But I think, and I'm not speaking for the company here, but I do think Windows will have a little piece of that pie, and I'd like to see us develop or support that platform. But it all depends on what our customers want and what the market dictates.
So when you do it, when it becomes able to do it, is it automatically going to be able to just go on all of them? Or you can just select the check mark in the box and now it's on the Windows 8?
If and when we support Windows 8, you'll be able to develop for Windows 8 through AppCloud. Whether or not you can effectively create a single app that works elegantly across all of those platforms is another story. Because the Windows 8 UI paradigm is very, very different from both iOS and Android. So it's eminently possible now to create a very good user experience that works nicely across iOS and Android. Windows might be very, very different. But we actually build these apps for you, so when we support the next platform, yes, it will more or less be a checkbox. Okay. You have a question?
Yeah, does this sit on top of like phone gap or something, or something similar?
The question was, does this sit on top of PhoneGap? Has anyone heard of PhoneGap?
Yeah.
Okay. PhoneGap's another very popular platform for hybrid native development. AppCloud is conceptually similar to PhoneGap. There's some architectural differences in the SDK itself. The major difference is that we're offering services in the background, so I just showed you one of them, push notifications. So PhoneGap is predominantly an SDK. Okay. So you build your app and then you're kind of on your own. We're building out content-related services. I'm going to show you a couple more in a little while, but push notifications was just one of them. So if you're building content-centric applications, AppCloud's a pretty good bet for you. And it might go without saying, but I do want to emphasize that we're focused on content-centric applications. So if you have in mind to build a game or something that's very graphics or processor intensive, you might want to go the native route, or there are platforms that are specifically geared toward gaming. So the few apps that I've showed you so far are content rich. Let me show you one more really quick because I think you'll dig this. This is an app that's in development. It's not released yet. It's for the Discovery Network. Can you see this? I love this app. It's hot. It's in Italian, so I don't know what it says.
But it's cool.
Hold on, I think I screwed it up because of the airplane. Hold on 1 second. Let me fix that again. I'm using some technology to wirelessly show you my iPad here. And mess something up. Okay. So this app, you would never know that this was built using web technologies unless you were the guy who built it. It's that slick. And it'll work on Android too. Probably won't be as performant on Android, but Android's going to catch up real soon. This is, one sec, this is also a dual screen application. So when you're watching a video, I can't demo it for you here because my device bridge won't allow it. But when you're watching a video, you can cast the video to the second screen. And this is for Apple TV only, this is for iOS only. You can cast the video to the second screen. Your tablet experience changes. So you now have a companion app while you're watching the video. This is bleeding edge stuff. It's for iOS only. Android is probably a year or two out with this technology. can only do it with AppCloud. You had a question?
Sort of answered it, but so if we're building an app using web technologies, will we be able to kind of build a phone and tablet app into the same one, or will we have to do two separate ones?
You can. The question is, can I do a phone and tablet at the same time? Yes, you can. You're getting ahead of me. And I'm going to show you how.
Question.
Yes.
We've got a client that's got hundreds of videos on your video platform. I already know the answer, but I'm going to assume that I can reference those files and bring it into their app that we built for them as well.
Oh, yes.
Cool. Awesome.
And I'll show you that too.
Very
The
good.
question was, can someone take Brightcove video and feed those videos into an app, either on the phone or tablet? The answer is yes. Thank you for that layup.
No problem.
Okay, so let me show you how to build an app. Okey-doke. I'm in AppCloud Studio. You can go to brightcove.com, click on AppCloud, register for a free account, and you can start building and publishing apps for free when you go home tonight. Okay? Some of the services I'm going to show you are not part of the free edition, so just be aware of that. This is the dashboard of AppCloud Studio. This is where you're going to come to get the AppCloud SDK. Okay? And you would also come here to download what we call the Workshop app. And this is an app for iOS and for Android that allows you to preview, interact with your apps as you develop it. I'll demonstrate that in a little bit. I've already downloaded the SDK. And this is what it looks like. When you download it, you're going to see a bunch of documentation, some sample code, some test code, tools folder. I just want to point out what the SDK actually is. It's a JavaScript file and a CSS file. This is the whole SDK. I'm going to run a script in a minute that will give me a boilerplate app structure. We have sample code in here that you can look at to see how things are put together. And I'll show you in a little while. We have some other examples up on GitHub. Okay? And just like web development, any avenue of web development, it's very easy and it's perfectly acceptable to look at other people's code and simply copy it. Okay? And this is all JavaScript and HTML and CSS, so you can modify it to suit your own purposes. I like to write my own stuff from scratch, but that still doesn't stop me from pulling in third-party libraries and taking other code that I like and dropping it into AppCloud. And once you get rolling with AppCloud, you'll develop a bag of tricks. And the first app you build might take you a few weeks or a few months to build, and then eventually get so good at it, you'll be spinning these things up in a few days. Okay? So I'm in the console here, terminal. I'm in the SDK. I'm going to go into the tools directory, and I'm going to run a script called scaffold.js. This is, everyone see this? Let me blow it up. This is a Node.js script. Anyone heard of Node? Node is the latest and greatest. It's awesome. We ship it with the SDK. So if you don't have Node on your computer, just open up the Node installer directory and install it. Okay? So we have some command line tools here. We also ship a web development server that you can use for local development. You'll see that in a minute. So I'm going to run this script here. I'm going to say node scaffold.js, and I'm going to just make a boilerplate app here. This is probably the best way to get started. This is just kind of a skeleton of an app for me. So I'm going to give the app a name. I'm going to call it going to call it my hello app, and I'm going to give it one or more views. So you remember the beer app I showed you? I had 4 sections. Each of those sections is a view. So I'm going to make 3 views and say, I'm going to call it hello and hiya and hey. Okay. Your application is located in AppCloud server public. Here it is. I've got a bunch of other apps in here at the same time. So let's see what's in here. What do we got? It's not a lot of mystery here. We've got some HTML files, some images, JavaScript files. There's the Brightcove SDK. We have a JavaScript file for each one of the views. We've got a style sheet for each one of the views, and that base style sheet. And then we've got some text files. A lot of the markup, a lot of the HTML is actually inside of these text files. So we're going to be compositing HTML at runtime in the client using JavaScript to manipulate the DOM. Okay? Everything you see here, all of these files, they're actually going to live on the device. Okay? All of these assets live on the device. And all you're going to be doing as a developer, more or less, is going out and requesting data and images and maybe some other assets. Okay? So this is kind of turning web development on its ear a little bit. When you're building a website, you're delivering HTML that's already pre-compiled for the most part on a server somewhere, and delivering that down to a client, a web browser. Okay? Here all these assets are actually living on the device. And you're going to go out and get data, and then with that data you're going to make the HTML on the fly in the client. It's not as hard as it sounds. And some of you might have already done this. If you're building rich web apps, you should know exactly what I'm talking about. You know what I'm talking about? Okay. So let me show you what this looks like here in the browser. I'm using Chrome. We develop against Chrome because Chrome is a WebKit browser. And on the phones, on iOS and on Android, both operating systems have WebKit implementations, which means you don't have to worry about Internet Explorer at all. Which is awesome, because it makes web development fun.
Yeah.
Okay. You can do all the new, for the most part, all the bleeding edge HTML5 stuff you want to do will work in iOS and Android. Okay. So here's my AppCloud web server. I'm at localhost 3773. It redirects me to my IP address. And these are a bunch of apps that I've already made, that I have already sitting in my directory here in the development server. Here's the app that we just made, Hello app. Can you see that? Okay. It's got the hello view. It's got the hi view. They're all the same. Okay. This is just a skeleton. Now you can go into the files and screw it up any way you want. Okay? You don't have to have a CSS document for every page. You can reorganize the directory structure if you want. I do. This is just a convenient way to get you started. Now, I'm going to pull up my beer app so you can see how this is put together and what the code looks like. So here's my photo gallery view. Now it looks a little funny here because it's being shown in a web browser this big. It looked more like this when it was on the phone. Here's my Twitter view and I messed something up. And my calendar view here. Okay. Now you're probably wondering what this QR code is. This QR code is simply this URL to a manifest file inside of the app. Let me show you what that looks like. Oops, that's not what I wanted to do. Here's my apps on tap. So here's my 4 views in the app, 4 HTML pages. I've got a bunch of images in here. Remember, all this stuff lives on the device. Okay? So these are just background images for the Chrome of my application. There's my header. There's some tiles. Style sheets. And this manifest file. This manifest file defines the structure of the app. And when you run that scaffold script, it'll create the manifest file for you. Most of this is very self-explanatory. The app has a name, a description. These are the devices I'm targeting. I can choose whether or not to use native navigation. Okay, so if I don't want to use that tab bar on iOS or the action bar on Android, the native navigations on the operating systems are different. Okay, if I don't want to use those, I can just turn it off right here. I can set that to false. And for each of my sections, I have a name. I point to an icon. I point to the HTML file. I point to the text file that has a lot of my HTML fragments. And then I can load data feeds from AppCloud Studio. This is another one of the services we provide that I'll show you in a few minutes. Okay. So, if you're wondering, what does this QR code do? Well, let me pull up my phone again. I'm going to open up the Workshop app. And I'm going to let's see if I can put these on the same screen here. Okay. So I'm going to scan this QR code in my Workshop app. So here's my Workshop app. The Workshop app allows me to interact with my apps as I'm developing them. I'm actually loading them up from my local development server. And I can type in this URL, but that's usually pretty painful, so I can just scan this QR code. Ready? Okay. So now I'm loading the app from my development server in a preview mode. And I can interact with it as if it was a published app. Okay? I don't have an icon on the desktop. I don't have a splash screen. But I have all the device capabilities, and I can interact with it as if it was a published app. And there's no compilation step. I didn't have to compile anything in Xcode or the Android developer tool. It's simply loading up from my development server. Now, what's cool is that I can go into my code here. Let me open up a text file here in my photo gallery. Here's my list of beers. I'm just going to reverse it. I'm going to go back to the Workshop app. I'm going to pull down this tab. Here you see where we have a refresh button and a restart button. So I can click refresh, or I can just pull the tab down all the way, refresh it, and now my UI has changed to reflect my code changes. Did everyone see that? Okay, so it's that fast. It's very much like web development we're all used to. Code a little bit, save, refresh. Okay, it's very iterative. Okay. So when I'm developing AppCloud, I have one hand on my keyboard, one hand on my phone, and I spend a lot of time working in the browser in Chrome, but I spend a lot of time right here on my device. And I can do the same thing on Android. And I can do the same thing on the iPad, and the same thing on an Android tablet. Okay. So the Workshop app, there are links to it from the, I'm trying to click that. There are links to it from the dashboard of AppCloud Studio. You can just search for Brightcove Workshop in the iOS store or the Android store. When I developed in Chrome here, everyone familiar with the Chrome developer tools? Yeah, it's invaluable. I'm not going to go into it right now. Every time I open up the Chrome developer tools, I discover something new. But you know, often I'm using the command line here to write, to test JavaScript, to interact with JavaScript on the page. And you know, so BC is a global object in our world. So I could say BC alert, or BC.device.alert. Right. And when we can, we'll fall back to a method that works in the web browser. Some of the device methods obviously only work on the phone itself. So sometimes we'll just fake it out in the browser, like, let's see, bc.device.vibrate. That's just a site guide. On the phone, it actually does vibrate. You can, I do half of my, if not most of my development in the Chrome developer tools. But every once in a while, something will manifest itself a little bit differently on the phone than it does in the web browser. You actually need to kind of get into the guts of the phone. And we have what we call remote debugging. Let me show you how this works. I'm going to go to AppCloud Studio, click on Tools, On-Device Debugging, and another QR code here. I'm going to shake your device. We have to shake my device. It says scan debug code. Okay, I'm going to scan this code. Now I've initiated a remote debug session, so I can control my phone from my web browser. And this looks like the Chrome developer tools. It doesn't have all the functionality of it, but quite a bit. So I can say, if I say bc.device.alert, you should see it come up on the phone, right? That's pretty cool. And I could say bc.device.vibrate. Probably not going to be able to hear this, but my phone just buzzed. Okay. So I can interact with the JavaScript from here. I can inspect the DOM. See how as I roll over here, right? I am here. Let's find one of these elements, right? I don't like that here. Okay, so the remote debugging is pretty cool when you absolutely have to use it. Yes?
Did it do it with Firebug?
This won't work with Firebug, but it's very similar to Firebug.
Right.
So if you know all the facilities of Firebug, you'll do just fine in the Chrome developer tools and this remote debugger.
I have a quick question.
Yes.
Instead of, I guess, the developer tools, does it work with Ripple?
Yeah, Ripple's a plugin for Chrome, right? Yeah, I've used it. Yeah, you can use it. Sure. I don't know if every bell and whistle and nod in Ripple is going to work here, but sure. We're just dealing with web tech here.
In that remote debugging, do you also have the ability to change padding, move things around on the
Yeah.
device on the website?
Yeah, you can change CSS in there, I'm pretty sure. But honestly, most of that stuff you're going to end up doing on the desktop because it's simply faster to do. Okay? You saw how easy it was to make a change. Hit save and then refresh here in the browser. So when you're iterating through your CSS and your JavaScript and your HTML, you can certainly use a remote debugger to do that, but you're probably just going to be developing, saving, refreshing here. That's a kind of more natural way to go about it. But it's up to you. All these tools are available to you. So what I want to do here is I want to tear down one of these views here and rebuild it so that you can see what the code looks like. Okay? And if I get carried away here, if I start nerding out too much, just say, whoa. Whoa. Slow it down. Okay? All right. Does everyone know JavaScript? A little bit of JavaScript? A lot of JavaScript? Okay. There's a lot of JavaScript in AppCloud. I'm not going to lie to you. Most of the UI is driven by JavaScript. Okay. You can maybe get away with copying someone else's code wholesale and fashioning an app that way, but you really have to know JavaScript to be a good AppCloud developer. Okay. So let me hide this. I'm going to go to my calendar view here. Okay, I want to show you one more thing first. I want to show you one more thing here. There were two other buttons up here. Restart. So if I want to do if I make any changes to the manifest file, then I need to restart. So for example, if I wanted to reorder these views, and I wanted to change the navigation title for Buzz to Deer, then I can't simply refresh. I need to restart the app. Okay? And you see now this title changed and the order of the views changed. Okay? So that's what restart does. And the last one is screenshot here. So I can actually take a screenshot, it'll inject it into an email, and you can fire it off to your boss or to your client, or what have you. Got it?
Does it take the screenshot with that menu or without?
No, without. Yeah. You know what? I showed to you, but I'm borrowing this phone. I don't think email's set up on it. So we're going to tear down this view, and I'm going to build it up quickly again. And at the end of this, I'll show you where the completed code is. So you don't have to write all this down. The code is online. Worry you not. Okay, so let's go to my code editor. You can use any code editor you want. Which is another thing I really like about AppCloud. You don't have to use Eclipse. Okay, we don't force you into a particular IDE. You just need a text editor. So I use BBEdit. I use Sublime, which is a very good text editor. Sometimes use Vim. Right? It's whatever you want. Dreamweaver, anything you want. You just need a text editor and a local web server, which we provide for you. Okay, so let me show you what that HTML page looks like. So it's an HTML5 page. Not a lot of mystery here. There's some required meta tags you need to put in here. Here's a style sheet. That's part of the SDK. Here's some of my own style sheets. Here's the JavaScript file from the Brightcove SDK. And here are some JavaScript files of my own. There's 1,000 different ways to write JavaScript. You can write it any way you want. The code I'm showing you is how I like to write it. You can write it as any fashion you want. Okay? And here's the body of the document. Notice there's not actually a lot of content in here. There's really no content in here. All the markup is generated dynamically. Okay? I just have some basic structure here to the app. And we're going to go get data, fashion some HTML from it, inject that HTML into the document. Okay. In AppCloud, you're going to do this over and over and over again. So if you've never done this, it might look a little strange to you, but you'll get the hang of it real quick. Yes?
No, do things like add font face work?
Yes.
Or you can actually put in your own fonts?
Yeah, I'm actually using it in here. Yeah. And I'll talk a little bit about CSS3 in a few minutes. Okay, so there's that. Now I have this JavaScript file. I'm going to just blow this away. Let me copy and paste it into a new document first. Okay. So I'm going to say, function calendar view. Okay. So in this code, again, you can write this any way you want. In my style, this code, anything that starts with this is a public or a visible method on this object, calendar view, and anything that starts with var is a private method. A few ways to skin this cat. I'm not going to go into the details of it right now. All I want to do right now to make sure I didn't break anything is I'm going to say console.log. Okay. So let's go back here to Chrome and reload. Nothing happened except I got a little message in the console that said hi. Okay. So whenever I make a code change, I refresh in the browser, make sure I didn't screw anything up. Got it? So what I want to do is I want to go get the data for this calendar view. Let's do that first. Let's go get data. Okay? How do we do that? There are a few ways to do it in AppCloud. I'm going to show you one way. I'm actually going to go to AppCloud Studio and get a data feed from AppCloud Studio, and we do that by saying DC core get data, and this is called meetups. So this is from the meetups API, and I know it's called meetups because I defined it in my manifest file here. I said this data feed is called meetups. That's the ID of it, and it's a feed. This is an asynchronous method, which means we're going to run a command and then there's going to be a response a fraction of a second later, 2 seconds later, we don't know, it's asynchronous, okay? So we have two callback methods. We have a success method and an error method. So we're going to say handle data, that's our success method, and then handle error, okay? So, okay, it's pretty simple. Let's write those methods. Let's just log out the data, see what we get, okay? Let me show you what happens, by the way, if I screw something up in the Chrome Developer Tools. Oops, where did we go? Okay, handle error is not defined, right? See how that's in red, it's barking at me? It tells me exactly where the problem is, calendar.js, line 4. This is why you want to develop with the Chrome Developer Tools. Okay, it'll tell you exactly where you screwed up when you screwed up. So let's write that method, handle error equals function error. So here I'm just going to say dc.device.alert plus error.error message. Okay, so this should work and it should print out the data that I get back from the server. Whoa, look at all that data. This is great too. With Chrome Developer Tools, you can give it any kind of JavaScript object and inspect the object right there in the command line. So here's what I'm getting back from the server. I get an array of objects. I've got 20 objects here. Okay. Now, if you've done rich web apps, you might be accustomed to kind of building up a long HTML string in your JavaScript code. You might do something like our HTML, let's say you're making an unordered list, you'd say, and then you iterate through the data and build up a very long string. I mean, that breaks down very quickly. You're just kind of a mess of code to print out HTML. We use a little templating system called markup.js that allows me to write HTML templates outside of the JavaScript and then pass data into those templates, okay? So this is just a long string here. I've given it a name. That's the name of it, calendar index template. And this is it, okay? Oops. This is a long string. This is loaded automatically by the Brightcove SDK. So I'm going to take this string. I'm going to take my data that I got back from the server, inject the data into the string, and I'm going to get a new string back. That's all we're doing with the templating system. We're taking one string, injecting data into it, getting a new string in return. And with that string, I'm going to inject that into the document. Okay? We're going to do this over and over again in AppCloud. Okay? And the things I'm showing you here, by the way, are not really specific to AppCloud. We make it very, very easy to do this, but the things I'm showing you here, you can use in other, in a mobile website or other hybrid platforms as well. But don't. You should use AppCloud. Okay, so let's go back to my JavaScript here. And I'm going to say, I'm going to get the template out of that text file. How can I do that? Well, I have access to it automatically. I can say bc.templates. Those are the strings that came out of that text file. The SDK loads them, stuffs them into an object, so I have access to them. So I don't have to put them into my JavaScript code. This enforces a separation of concerns. Okay? So all my presentation logic is in one place. All my control logic is in another place, and they're separate. So my business logic is going to do something. Say, hey, I got this data, now let me go pass it off to that presentation layer and let him do something with it. So here's how we actually put it together. Can everyone read this? Okay, so we're going to say bc.templates, and then we called it calendar index template. And we need to give data to the template, so we call this a context object. So I'm going to say context equals meetups, and I'm going to assign it data. So meetups is an array of objects. And then the result is going to be, we're going to use the markup templating system, which only has one function. Let me just print out this, let me just print out the result here so you can see what it looks like. Right, you see this? There's my mess of HTML. Right? I didn't have to implement a bunch of crazy logic in my JavaScript to get that. I declared what I wanted in the text file, assigned the data to it, and here's my HTML. So now I just need to inject this into the document. So let's find the element we want to inject it into. Document get element by ID. You can use jQuery to do this as well. I kind of like to play it straight. We ship jQuery with the AppCloud SDK. So if you wanted to do right, you put the, that's a selector. Okay. I would say document get element by ID, calendar index, and we're going to say element.innerHTML equals markup. Right? And there it is. Okay. Now, I'm not going to go too deep here, but I do want to show you a couple other things. What else do we have to do here? Well, we need to be able to capture a tap event. So the user's going to click on one of those items, and then we need to transition into a detail page, right? We need to do that. I also want to cache the data. I want to store the data on the device. Why would I want to do that? Anyone?
Offline speed.
Speed.
Also when data's not available.
Exactly, right? So let me illustrate this for you. And this is one of those things that you need to be cognizant of now that you're app developers, okay? So you're not developing for desktop websites anymore where you have unlimited real estate, unlimited bandwidth, unlimited power, persistent connection to the internet, right? You're an app developer, and shit goes wrong, okay? So let me demonstrate for you. I'm gonna this data call here. I'm gonna put this in a set timeout. So we're gonna pretend that it takes 5 seconds for this data to come back. Okay? I mean, maybe the user's in a tunnel, or they otherwise have a very slow, choppy connection to the internet. So we're going to wait 5 seconds for this. I'm already off playing Angry Birds. I can't wait this long for the data to come back, right? We're an important person. We're important people. Can't wait. So what I want to do while I'm waiting for that data to come back, even if it only takes half a second, is I want to show old data while I'm going and getting the new data. Does that make sense? Right? So I'm going to show old data right away Then I'm going to go get the new data. I'm just going to obliterate the old data. Now, in your app, you might want to be a little more graceful about it. You might want to tell the user that there's new data. Do they want to refresh? Okay. You might want to check the old data, compare it to the new data, and then decide if you need to do anything. The data might be the same. Right? So I'm doing a very kind of basic implementation here of caching old data. What I want to do here, I'm going to write another method. I'm going to call it render index page. And I'm going to take this here and I'm going to put it in there. The first thing we do when the data comes back is we're going to cache this. I'm going to say BC core cache. And this is just a name and a value. Any kind of value you want. It can be a complex object. So we're going to stuff that data into the cache, and then we're going to render the index page. Get that data. Okay. Let's make sure I didn't screw it up. I screwed it up. Data is not defined. Calendar line 16. Exactly. Okay. So you see it takes, I don't know, it's a quarter of a second, right? It's not instantaneous. We're going to a server and getting data back. Let's extract this method here. Let's say save meetups. All this code is available online, by the way. BC, core cache, meetups. So that's how I put it in the cache, but I want to write a method to actually get it out of the cache. Okay, so I'm going to say get save meetups. And that's very similar, except I only have one argument here. I might have nothing in the cache because users never opened this app before. So I want to be careful to return something if that cache is empty. And in this case, I'm just going to return an empty array. This is a short. Is everyone familiar with the shorthand that I just wrote? Okay. Yeah, this is a really nifty JavaScript shortcut. That's the OR statement. So if this is null or undefined or false, this is going to be returned. Okay. So what I want to do here, as soon as the view boots up, is I want to go get data in the cache. So I'm going to say, and I have all the functions now to do this. I'm going to say render index page with the meetups from the cache. Get save meetups. So it's going to do this. Okay. And here we're going to say console.log rendering index page. So we're going to do that. Then we're going to go get new data. Then we're going to go get new data. And when that data comes back, we're going to put it into the cache. We're just going to obliterate whatever is in the cache. And then we're just going to re-render the index page. Right? You see how I did it twice? I screwed something up here. Shouldn't have been drinking today. You catch my drift though, okay? The working code is online. Okay. So we're going to show old data right away. There's no delay. User's not looking at a blank white screen. And then we're going to go out and get new data. Okay?
I have a question about that last function, the gate save. Why don't you return?
Oh, I know what the problem is. I'm sorry. What's the problem with this? What's the problem here?
There's no return.
There's no return.
Exactly, exactly. You get free t-shirts. I got a stack of t-shirts here. You sure to see one. Okay. And you know, I've only made this mistake about 12 times. Okay. So you see how that was, you see how now it shows right away? See, rendering. So we just blew away whatever was there. Okay. I interrupted you, had a question.
No, that was the question, why don't you have return statement?
Because I screwed up. Okay. By the way, we have, I don't know, 25 t-shirts or so, first come, first served, but you guys get first dibs, okay? So let me show you a couple more things in this view. And I don't expect you to retain all of this. I'm just trying to impart what it's like to develop in AppCloud, okay? And once you understand these principles, it's very, very easy. So we want to now listen for a tap event on a list item. There is no such thing as a tap event. There are touch events. But there's no such thing as a tap event. We actually manufacture the tap event from touch events.
What about gestures?
Excuse me?
Gestures?
We support tap and swipe. We're looking at incorporating other UI libraries to give you more gesture support. But you can drop in other libraries, like I said earlier. We have a minimal UI layer. Okay. So there are some gesture support libraries that we might end up incorporating ourselves, but until we do that, you're certainly free to drop them in. One of them that I've looked at is called Hammer.js. It's a gesture library. Okay. So we have tap and swipe in our SDK. Yeah, it's called Hammer because you can't touch this. Yeah. Did I just date myself? Everyone knows MC Hammer, right? Yeah. Or Hammer, I guess he's just Hammer now. I don't know what he is now. It's a reality story. Okay, but it's a good library, but it's low level. It just provides the events for you, and then it's up to you to determine how to handle those events. So what I want to do is I want to listen for tap event on list items. So we're going to say, and this is where I'm going to use a little bit of jQuery. I'm going to say calendar index on. I always get this wrong. Let's say handle list item tap. So this is a callback function to it. So listen for tap events. So let's write that. Handle list item tap. Let's just say console.log. Let's log the event now. See what we get. Tap, tap. All right, I got a lot of juicy event data. I don't need all that. I want to say event.current target. Look at that. You see where I'm going with this? Now what I want to do is I've embedded the ID of the meetup in the HTML element using HTML5 data attributes. Right? Let me show you what that looks like. I just embedded it right here. Okay? And if we look at if we inspect the DOM here, I mean, the user can't see this because they're data attributes. But I can see them here. And that way I know exactly what the user's clicking on. There are other ways to do it too. You could look at the list of things and infer that the user clicked on the 7th item in the list and then go to your data set and say, I need the 7th item. But I don't like to do that because the stuff that I'm storing in my data array might not exactly mirror what I have in the UI. And I like to flip things up and down a lot, so I like to embed an ID here. Yeah, because this thing might be, I might decide, I want to show this in my first run.
Do you have support for XPath?
Excuse me?
Do you have support for XPath?
XPath. I actually don't know. Android supports it. I think you can use it in iOS, but I'm not sure about Android. It's a good question. And if you want to stay late, I'll look into it with you. The question was, can you do XPath queries. I forget what the JavaScript method is called, but the answer is I don't know. But you can do a lot now in JavaScript that you otherwise would have had to use jQuery for, like document. Anyone ever use document query? Anyone document query selector? Does anyone ever use this method but me?
Yes, replace it with a $sign and you'll be fine. You don't need jQuery.
You know, if you don't want to use jQuery, you can use. So this is going to return the first list item. Query selector all gives me all of them. I did that without jQuery. How are you supposed to program a website without jQuery? Just type window in the Chrome developer tools and you'll spend about 3 weeks learning shit you never knew existed. I'm serious, it's a really great way to learn to see a whole litany of things in here you never knew existed, and then you can go look up the docs on them. Every time I look at this, I learn something new.
But are these JavaScript functions just for like Chrome or like WebKit?
No, most of those will work in Firefox too. Right now we are only concerned with WebKit implementation because we're on iOS and Android. But I'm not showing you anything that's really bleeding edge. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to get the ID out of there, and then we're going to go to our data set and find the meetup that has that ID, and then we're going to transition into a new view if we have time. I know that how are we doing on time, Wesley?
You're fine.
We're fine? Maybe 15
8:30? Yeah,
15 more minutes?
I would say so.
Okay, 15 more minutes. And then I'm happy to stay afterwards and answer any questions you have. I'm going to try to leave a few minutes for questions from the group. So let's say event.currentTarget get attribute data meetup ID, right? What do we get now? Boom, boom, boom. Boom. So there's my meetup ID, right? We could also say this, .get attribute. And that's because this, in this context, refers to the element. This function is bound to that element. This is one of those confusing areas in JavaScript where this has different meanings depending on its context. It's probably better to say event.get attribute. You think so?
Yeah.
Okay. Event.get attribute, event.current target.get attribute. Okay. So there's our ID. Let's get a meetup. I already have a function to do this in my global app file where I say find in data set. So we're going to do that. So we're going to say app.find in data set. So what's my data? Well, I'm going to say get saved meetups. I already have that in the cache. Go back anytime I want to get that data. And I want the property name and the property value is ID. Okay. So that's a little convenience method that I wrote for myself. And let's log that out and see what we get. So now I get that whole object, right? Now, what am I going to do now? I'm going to go get another template. I'm going to have my new set of data. I'm going to inject that data into the template. I'm going to render a new page. Okay. I'm not going to show you that here. I'm just going to copy, paste all this code into here so you can see what that looks like. Right. So we have two templates here. Listening for a tap event and going and getting data from the data that I saved in the cache. I'm doing the same thing I did to render the index page. Okay? Doing the same thing over and over again. It's really easy once you get the hang of this.
Just simply because I know you don't support a lot of gestures there, but is it possibility, like if you went into a context menu of that event, because technically it's just a long tab, is it possible to say like a hold, like if they hold of that item? Do you support that gesture?
We don't support a hold, but I think Hammer.js library might, or you can simply write it yourself by listening for a touchdown event and then a touch up event, and if they're not very far apart. So that's a whole. But maybe that's something we'll add, actually. I'm really interested in adding that additional gesture support. What we'll probably do is end up finding a library that does it really well. Notice here, by the way, we haven't gone anywhere. So we're on calendar.html. We haven't gone to a new page. We're still on the same page. We're just manufacturing all these effects and all this content on the fly with JavaScript, CSS, and HTML. Does everyone get that? Okay.
Going back to the gesture real quick, if you touch, move away, and then let go, does that register as a click, or does that register?
No.
Okay.
Right.
It's
So,
like a cancel click.
well, it's nothing. We infer a tap event from touch event. So if you do a touch start and a touch end, and they're near each other within, I think, a certain amount of time.
Is it also based on location?
Yeah, they have to be physically near each other within a certain amount of time. That's a tap. It's actually not hard to write that yourself. We give it to you, and we dispatch that event through jQuery. We call it tap event. Okay. So here is this view. Now let me show you a couple of cool things you can do with the markup templating system. This is my template file. Like I said earlier, it's loaded automatically by the Brightcove SDK. I've got 2 templates in here. It's delimited by this convention where you just write the name of the template, the 5 equal signs in front of it. So the SDK loads this up and it stuffs it into an object. I can have as many templates as I want in this text file. It's just a convenience for you. It makes it easy to write big gobs of HTML without touching your JavaScript. And if you want, for whatever reason, you can decide in your JavaScript code, hey, I got to show this template and not this template. Okay? And that's how you can start to do complex things like change the presentation based on whether you're on a phone or on a tablet, or based on some user preference. Okay? You might have a user preference, for example. The user might decide, I want to look at this in a grid view or in a list view. Okay? And you store that preference in the cache. And then if their preference is list, you're going to go get that template and give the data to that template. Otherwise, you're going to go give it to the grid template. You can do anything you want with this. The point is we've separated the presentation logic from the control logic. And here I can start to do really interesting things. So I already showed you that I reversed this. What if I only want to show the top 5 here? Let's refresh this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Right. Get rid of that. Let's take the name here. Let's uppercase it. Right? Let's uppercase it and let's chop it to 20 characters. Right? So this presentation logic is in the presentation layer. And then it's really easy to write your own plugins. So we call these pipes. It's really easy to write your own pipes. So let me go into my app.js file. Let me just write one here. Let's say we want to reverse a string. Flip the string upside down. So let's call this flip. We're going to take a string. Let's reverse it. How do we do this? Say return string dot split reverse join. Right? Anyone? All right, I didn't break anything. So now let's go here and let's go to my name. We're going to uppercase it and then we're going to flip it around. Right? That's ridiculous, but I wanted to show you how easy it was to write your own pipes for that templating system. Okay, you can do really complex stuff too. There's a question.
When you cache memory, you cache in the internal storage of the device. When you are caching the data, you are caching the data.
Caching it.
You do it in memory or in internal storage?
The question was, is that data stored in memory or on disk? That's stored on disk. So when I was doing VC Core Cache, that is a wrapper around HTML5 local storage. Okay. The file downloading I showed you earlier uses a different mechanism to store binary assets. but it's on disk. Okay. You don't have unlimited space with BC Core Cache, but if you're only storing textual data, you're not probably never ever going to hit a wall. Okay. So that's that. Now there are a couple other things I wanted to show you in the 5 minutes that I have left. Okay. Someone was asking about CSS and web fonts. You can use just about any of the bleeding edge stuff in CSS and it'll work on iOS and Android. Let me show you this. Let me show you my app again. Okay, so you see this effect here? That's CSS transitions and transforms, right? We have box shadow here. We have opacity on these black boxes here. We have pseudo classes. Oh, I keep trying to tap that. I keep my finger. So we have pseudo classes here. You see how this guy is? So I'm scaling that. And that's on a pseudo class, on an active pseudo class. When I'm fading these images in and out, that's also a CSS transition on a CSS transform. And these icons here up in the top, that's actually a web font. It's called Font Awesome. It's pretty awesome. It's a bunch of icons baked into a font file. We don't ship this, I've just used it in my app. And they've got a bajillion icons that are infinitely scalable because it's a font file. Very cool stuff. But you can use any web font you want. Use TTF, so it works across iOS and Android. You can use media queries and flexible box model to do some cross form factor designs here. So this is a sample playlist, video playlist that I created. And see how it kind of stretches and adapts. So here's, imagine you're on a tablet, maybe you're on an e-reader here, and now you're on a phone. Got it? There's no JavaScript in here. It's all CSS. And it's really not hard to write. You just have to sit down for a few minutes and learn it. I've done the same thing here with a news article. Here's my desktop view. Here's my tablet view. Here's my e-reader view. And here's my phone view. See how I change the headline and I change the size of the text? I get rid of padding. There's no JavaScript in here whatsoever. And this is a video tag right here. Sometimes you do need to use JavaScript to know when the orientation changes. If you want to bake in any specific functionality on that orientation change. Because CSS is only going to affect the presentation. With JavaScript, though, you can affect the behavior. So we give you an event that says, oh, the orientation changed. Now if you want to do something outside the presentation layer, you can. You just listen to that event. So here, I'm changing some text when the orientation changes from landscape to portrait and back. Right? And finally, you can combine all these methods to create, if you're really good, from one code base, an app that works on tablets and phones on iOS and Android at the same time. So here, I'm using JavaScript to determine whether I'm running on a tablet or a phone simply based on the amount of real estate I have. So when this loads up, it's going to do its tablet thing. Now let's make this smaller and reload the page. Now it's doing its phone thing. Okay? So I have two JavaScript files with two JavaScript functions. If I'm on a tablet, I'm going to do my new tablet view. Otherwise, I'm going to say new phone view. And I can have different CSS and different templates and text files that I showed you. You can mix and match these techniques to produce apps across platforms, across form factors, very, very efficiently once you get into the groove. So, where can you learn more? Go to brightcove.com, click on App, Platform, and then just say get an AppCloud port. And you'll land on the dashboard, download the SDK, and do everything I showed you how to do tonight. On the dashboard of AppCloud Studio, there's a link to our high-level documentation. The JavaScript API documentation is in the SDK itself. There's a link to our discussion group, which is a Google group. If you can't get enough of me, you can click watch the overview, and there are some video tutorials here. The very first one is how to get started. Here's where you download the SDK. Here's where you download the workshop app. On GitHub, if you search for AppCloud demos, there are a bunch of apps that show you how to do one or two things. They're not fully formed applications, but they're working, and they'll show you how to do things like authentication, things with media queries, etc., etc. And finally, you can go to DC AppCloud on Twitter, follow DC AppCloud on Twitter, and that's that. Now, there were a couple things I didn't have time to show you. A couple other services. Do you have 3 more minutes? I can show you really quickly. I think you're going to dig it. Okay, 3 more minutes. So I showed you push notifications. And this goes again to the phone gap question. How's AppCloud different from phone gap? We're developing a whole suite of cloud services to help you manage your apps once you've developed them. So push notifications is one of them. You can pull in content feeds through AppCloud if you want. Why would you want to do that? Well, you can actually, let me show you the 2 content feeds I had in the beer app. So here's my calendar, which is coming from meetup.com. So here's the URL, here's the idea that I can limit the size of the response, and then I can go in and get rid of all the fields that I don't want. Right? So this thing started out at 55K, now it's 43K. And the more stuff you take out, the smaller the payload gets. And this matters. I mean, every bit matters when you're developing a mobile app. Okay? And then all the devices are going to hit our servers instead of your servers for this data. So we take the data, we optimize it, cache it for a period of time, and everyone wins. The other type of content feed, well, we have 2 other types of content feeds. You can hang arbitrary text off of AppCloud. So that photo gallery data is just a text block inside AppCloud Studio that I'm pulling down and parsing as a JSON object. Super easy. So you can drop HTML in here, text, CSV, XML, JavaScript, or JSON, whatever you want. Okay? Very, very easy. And then the last one, and this goes to your question earlier, you can pull in content from your Video Cloud playlists. Super easy. You just put in your read API token. It's kind of all there, and then you can check which fields you want. And the underlying data call looks almost identical. We do something very similar for images. We have an image transcoding API. You can take big images, make them small at runtime. We're not talking about Photoshop here. Big images, make them small at runtime. So let me go to my website here, beer.brightcove.com, and let's find an image here. Now this particular image, I might format this 100 different ways on phone and tablet, right? Depending on what the screen real estate is, which way you're looking at it, phase of the moon, whatever. This photo is 145K. I don't need the photo this big going down to my mobile app, and I certainly don't need it to be 145K. Okay? If I didn't resize and crop those images in my app, it's a megabyte worth of photos. It simply wouldn't work over the cell network. I mean, it would be very painful to load that view. So I can run this through the image transcoding service and say transcode.appcloud.brightcove.com image equals, let's say I need it to be 200 pixels. Boom. And now it's 13K. So I reduced the size of this thing like 90%, right? Maybe I need the height to be 200 pixels. Maybe I don't know. I just know the max dimension needs to be 200 pixels. I want to crop it because I'm making a photo gallery, cute little square images. I'm going to crop it to 200 by 200, and then I'm going to say the width is 100 and the height is 100. And now I've got these beautiful little thumbnail images. So this is another one of content-centric services that we're building out.
If you pull one on portrait, one on landscape, do you end up caching the photo twice in your device?
We cache the source image, but as long as the parameters are different, every request is unique. So you can, all these determinations you can make at runtime. Okay? You just build up that URL string, make the call, you're going to get an image back. And that image is going to be smaller than your source image.